Recording in progress.
Good evening, everybody. Today we will be speaking about how to prepare our students for ZNO testing in the most efficient way. Of course, ZNO in our country, this is a phenomenon that everybody has to go through at least in their lifetime. But we as teachers, we have to go through that every single year. And the more we are ready, the more we are prepared, the easier for us and for our students will it be next time to go through that without any problems. Let's start with revising some basic facts about ZNO testing. So what do we know about ZNO? ZNO in numbers, so 150. I think everybody knows that this is the number of minutes the students are given, including listening. 14, this is number of test points the students get for their writing task. 72, there is the test points, the total number of test points maximum that the students can get, which will be transformed, of course, into 200 system later. 4, it's not hard to guess that it's 4 sections of our ZNO test. This is listening, reading, and use of English and writing, of course. So this is our due date, as you see, the 7th of June, 2022. This is the date when English ZNO test is going to take place this academic year. And the last number 5. Number 5 represents actually the number of tasks our students will have to do while coping with the text. This is multiple choice, true-false statements, gap filling, matching activity, and writing. Of course, as we know, the first section that our students will have to start with, this is listening. And this is not something that they can choose. This is obligatory, and everybody starts with that one. And we remember that it lasts 30 minutes. That means that our students must be ready to cope with listening tasks for 30 minutes non-stop. This is quite a difficult task. This is quite challenging and demanding. Listen for 30 minutes and without getting tired and being concentrated, being focused. And after that, still be fresh enough to cope with reading and writing as well. What should our students be ready for? So dear students, if you are watching me, what you should be ready for, and teachers, how to prepare our students for that. So if we look, the first task, as we remember, this is the task that will comprise of 6 items, 3 of which are based on pictures and 3 of which are based on just writing, like written questions. Why do they begin with their pictures? This is quite logical. Because when you have got a visual base, for our brain, it's much easier to process information. So we see pictures and we don't already need to visualize because pictures do it for us. Still, this can be pretty tricky. In what way? So the first thing that you need to remember when you do listening is that before listening starts, first of all, you need to read questions attentively. Why am I speaking about it? It seems quite logical, but still. So this is something that needs to be paid attention to. When we see pictures and when we see text, what does brain concentrate more on? Of course, pictures, not text. But so please tell your students, remember that first of all, of course, you will need to read the question very attentively. I've chosen the picture like actually the first listening task in the test that was given to students in the year 2020. So what problem did a lot of students encounter here? When you see watch, clock, how does your brain react? Your brain automatically takes it as the question is going to be about time. And unless you read the question attentively, you might also think so. I am reminding to you that before first listening task, you will be given only 10 seconds to concentrate on the task. And by the time you realize that all three watch show the same time, you will already have lost quite a big part of your time. You'll have just wasted it. So first of all, read question attentively. And if you read the question, which watch did the speaker buy, you understand that the question is definitely not about time. It's about description of a watch. Or, for example, from last year's test, also like you see the pictures and you think, okay, so there must be something wrong with the girl, and the question is going to be, what's wrong with the girl? But if you look attentively, you will see that this is actually what is not among Laura's symptoms. So, you've read question attentively. What's your next step? Next step is to concentrate on the pictures, analyzing similarities and differences. If you look at the first set, you can see that you have got two watches with the strap, one watch with a bracelet. And while you're analyzing, you're also refreshing all the information in your brain, like you start to recall the lexis, and so you are getting ready for that. So then you see the next difference. One clock actually has got round face, and the other two, they've got square faces. Yes, also the number of hands differ. 3 hands versus 2 hands. So this is what you need to concentrate on. Or here you can see the girl coughing, you can see the girl with fever, high temperature, or stomach aches. When you are ready, like when you've analyzed the picture, you've refreshed lexis, then you are ready. It means that at this point you are already quite ready to listen. Of course, we know that students are given, like, they've got 2 chances, yes, kind of 2 chances. They listen for the first time, and then they listen for the second time. So sometimes it's not very easy to get the whole meaning from the first time. That's why the second time is given. And but what I also recommend students to do, if you are confident that, for example, version A, option A is not correct, cross it off immediately. Because if you don't cross it off immediately, if you leave it until later you might never remember like which one was that, like you thought it was wrong, maybe A, maybe C, maybe you start confusing something. So if you are confident it's wrong, cross it off. So now let's look at the tape script of this first task. Wow, that's a nice watch. Where did you get it? I bought it on television. I was watching one of those shopping programs and saw this watch. Why this one? I've been watching for bracelet watch with square face and 3, 1, 2, 3 hands. It was the same watch I saw at the jewelry shop for $40 more. So as you see, the correct option is B, because the lexis that coincides is bracelet, it's not strap. It's square, it's not round, so it's not A. And of course, it's 3 hands, not 2 hands, so it cannot be C. While you are training it with your students, make them explain what's wrong with the other two options. Not only should they explain why, like the option that they've chosen, why it is correct, but also they should say what's wrong with the others two. You need to see clear understanding of your students of what they hear. So we are moving on. One more thing you need to be ready for. You need to be ready for the fact that while listening, you will hear information about all three of the pictures. Like here, like as I've already told you, first you are reading the question, which pet is the girl going to have? You, like in your mind, you very quickly activate like this. You have got a parrot, it's type of a bird, you have got cat or a kitten, and you've got a dog. Yes, but just a second, I'll do this way so that I can also switch on recording, and we are going then to listen and hear that all the three pictures are mentioned.
Now look at the three pictures for question 2.
So now it will start.
Oh, what a beautiful cat. Don't you think so? I have always dreamt to have one like this.
If I were you, I'd rather get a dog. Dogs are more loyal than cats.
Yes, but there's so much work. Would you be willing to walk it every single day and clean up after it?
Good point. What about a bird or a fish?
Then I'd have to spend a lot of money on a cage or a fish tank. And I really don't know how to take care of birds or fish. No, I've already made my choice.
Okay, so as you've noticed, first of all, the girl spoke about cat, then they discussed dog, and after that, they also discussed bird. So which means they did mention all three pictures. And if your students are not ready for the situations, they might get quite confused and then lose concentration and then the rest of listening. So it might go not as well as they are planning. So be ready to hear information about all of the three pictures. But of course, only one of them will be connected with the question. So this is one more reason to read the question really, really attentively. So moving on, the next three questions in the first part of our listening task. So it's based also three short situations, which are based just on the questions, like written questions on words, actually, yes? So which makes the job for our work a little bit more complicated. In what way? When we had the picture, we didn't need to even visualize, because everything was provided. You see the picture, so and that's it. But now you see words, you need to concentrate more. So to concentrate more, to make your students more concentrated, what I recommend is all listening should be done with their pen in hand. So all preparation as well. So they are not just reading the question, they are concentrating their mind on main points, on keywords. What's Marilyn's main argument in favor of renting a flat in the city? Main argument, favor, renting, and I would say city. And then we also look at options. Space for parking is important, shopping is important, and also here like cost, traveling. Why do we need to underline that? Because then it's so much easier for our words for our brain to concentrate on the main information. One more thing that you need to be ready for, if the question contains such words as main, most, least, that means that everything will be mentioned, but only one of them will be in the degree like that is necessary. So, and now I will also do like this, because I also need to switch on just a second. Just a second, 1 second. Yes. Okay. Yes, here it is.
Ви бавитеся з дітьми, ми долаємо жар та біль.
No, I'll do in a different way from here. Yes, directly from here.
Now you have 10 seconds to look at question 6.
I'll skip the time.
Marilyn, I'm thinking of renting an apartment in the city center. You know, I've only lived in the suburbs, so tell me if I'm missing something about living in the city.
Well, Alice, the first thing you need to know is how much you are spending already on trains to get from the suburbs to your job every day. When you take this into account, the city apartment may look like a better option. What else are you thinking about?
Well, I would also like to live within walking distance of shops, restaurants, and parks. And how easy will it be for friends to visit me in terms of parking?
As far as I know, everything closes at 6 p.m., though there are a lot of stores nearby. Parking can also be a problem. Even if you don't own a car, you might get one later. Plus, your visitors might need to park.
As you see here, also all three of them were mentioned, but only cost of travel, which was paraphrased, of course. So is the correct answer, because it was given as the main arguments, since all other arguments were added with the help of, but also like what else needs to be taken into account, but it was already not the main one. And one more thing, like in questions, not that much to paraphrase, because actually you have got pictures, yes? But when the questions are written with words, of course, you will need to take into account paraphrasing. So each time you read a question, you need to think of the words that might be used instead of the definite words. Like the cost of travel, we know this is fair. So if your students are able to predict the words, of course, it will make their lives much easier. So moving on. So the next listening task is a little bit more complicated, a little bit more difficult, since it's going to be, in most cases, this is a conversation between two people and the task is true-false. This is the only true-false task in the ZNO test. So the time you are given before a recording begins, it's 20 seconds, but actually it's going to be a little bit more. In what way? You know that the task is announced, but if your students have done a lot of similar tasks, of course they understand what they will need to do with the tasks. So they can already take this time to just skim through all the items, skim through all the statements. Why do they need that? It's like it's kind of reading for gist to create in their mind a picture of what it is all about. So when they have this picture, then it becomes much easier for them also to choose keywords, because this is what they are going to do next. So when these 20 seconds start, they are already holding their pens and working with their question words. So I will do just with the two first items. We'll see LA, American industry, simultaneously. And once again, we activate Lexis. We very quickly think how can it be like paraphrased simultaneously, is happening something at the same time. So we also think about that. Then the second one, LA climate, beneficial film. So once again, when they underline keywords, they kind of draw this picture in their mind, and for their mind, it becomes much easier to concentrate. After that is done, then at that point, they are ready to listen. So let's look at just the first question that was here. Like, Los Angeles and American film industry developed simultaneously. So this is the beginning of the tape script. At the start of the 20th century, a new city was beginning to grow on some flat land near the sea in Southern California. Its name was Los Angeles, the name of the old Spanish mission that had been there for many years. At the same time, a new industry was being born, the cinema. At the same time, this is what coincides with the word simultaneously, which of course makes the first statement true. And in such a way, item by item, students go through all of the statements. We understand that the first time they listen, this is listening for gist. Listening the general story, what it is about. If they're like after already the first listening, if they are confident about some items, they can already match it at the after during the first listening. But if they are not confident, please don't concentrate on something that you didn't hear properly, because if you try to concentrate like on the next item, for example, you might miss the rest of the story and never hear it. And then, of course, you are given one more time, but then it will be much harder for your brain. So the first listening is listening for gist. The second listening then is going to be already for details. You will need details of it. So that was the second listening task. The third listening task is the biggest one and the most challenging. Sometimes it's monologue, sometimes it's dialogue, but just like in the second listening task, there are also 5 items, but those 5 items, first of all, they were just true, false. So you needed to choose 1 out of 2. While here, with the multiple choice activity, they need to choose 1 out of 3, which already, of course, reduces their chances. So, but the time that is given before the task is even more. It's normally 40 seconds. And once again, even while the task is being announced, they can already start reading through the questions, trying to grab the general meaning of what they are going to listen about. And very, very quickly also take their pens, black pens. Remember, they are allowed to have only black pens with them. Underline question words like sometimes they will need to do it only in questions, sometimes in both questions and options. If the option is very short, like nothing to underline, yes? But if it's longer, they need to concentrate on main idea. Like question 12, when will National Reader Book Day take place? When they take place? And very quickly, autumn, spring, summer. Then the second question, when Gerald, and like name of a book. Yes, we understand that this is about writing when. So a book, of course, it's when it's written and when the name is given. Before Jersey, then when he was a child, or after TV series. So this is the way they should choose keywords. And you should teach them to reduce the number of keywords to absolute minimum, because if they start underlining everything, this is just useless. So for their brains, it will be too hard to focus. So we reduce the number of keywords, key phrases to absolute minimum. So, and here, once again, we still remember about paraphrasing. We remember that even these seasons can be expressed in different ways, like autumn, it can be like American version, fall can be given, or we might hear just names of months that correspond to definite seasons. Here we might hear like information connected with before moving to GRC, for example, like he did that and after that, so still remember, move to GRC, so still remember about it, keep in mind, please. You need to train your students choose and underline keywords as soon as possible, because this is the process that takes quite some time, and they are really, really limited in time in the ZNO test. What I do, like how do I work with my students? At first, like in autumn, they can as much time as they need, yeah, because at the first step, this is not about time. The first step is about choosing really necessary words. But then we also add the moment of time. We need to take it into consideration. We cannot do without them. Now, for example, I start limiting their time, but for example, for the first time, I would limit it to 1.5 minutes, then 1 minute and 20 seconds. And already like a month before testing, I always time them. And so they have precisely 40 seconds to underline keywords. If they cannot fit in that time, they will have to do with only what they have underlined by the time, and the rest, like, hope that next time they will do better. So let's see, like, also tape script. For the first question, when will National Reader Book Day take place? Today we turn our attention to forthcoming National Reader Book Day, and we are delighted to welcome Mrs. Ludmili, the Director of Wildlife Conservation Trust. So, Mrs. Durrell, will you tell us about this day? Most willingly, it's going to be on the 6th of September, and I'd like to talk about blah, 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 blah. So we understand that September, of course, represents autumn, but for that, your students need to know at least names of months in English as well. It might seem obvious, but for our students who use only Ukrainian names of months, which don't coincide with English, unlike Russian, so it might be sometimes like confusing. They do confuse sometimes the names of months, so please make sure that they know them properly. So moving on, the ways to train your students. Be focused, stay focused for long periods of time, because this is the most challenging thing they will have to cope with, they will have to deal with. One thing if they do one task at a time, but another thing when they have to do 3 tasks non-stop, listening each of them twice, like without taking any pauses, of course. So what I usually do, I use tape scripts. For example, here I have got a tape script that I took from book Get 200. So look here, like I've modified this text a little bit. Let's try and find out in what way I modified this first part. So just a second, let's listen.
CD1 Track 5. 1. I once met a very strange girl. It was at a summer camp. The 2 of us ended up sharing the same room, so I felt I had no alternative but to make friends with her. I'd always been very outgoing and open-minded, so it was part of my nature to want to socialize with people.
And so on. So if you've noticed, what I've done is I actually added some words that weren't present in listening task originally. So I've just inserted some words, and while students listen, like during the first listening, they need to identify what's wrong with the tape script that I provided. And after the second listening, they need, like in this case, they would cross out the words that I added. Let's have a look at a different example. It's the same text, but this time this tape script has been modified in a little bit different way. Let's see and try to notice what's wrong with it this time.
CD1 Track 5. 1.
I once met a very strange girl. It was at a summer camp. The two of us ended up sharing the same room, so I felt I had no alternative but to make friends with her. I'd always been very outgoing and open-minded, so it was part of my nature to want to socialize with people. She seemed the complete opposite, withdrawn, unwilling to chat.
So if you've been attentive enough, this time you've noticed that I actually deleted some words from original tape script, from original listening task. One more version. Let's see what I've done this time.
CD1 Track 5. 1.
I once met a very strange girl. It was at a summer camp. The two of us ended up sharing the same room, so I felt I had no alternative but to make friends with her. I'd always been very outgoing and open-minded, so it was part of my nature to want to socialize with people. She seemed the complete opposite, withdrawn, unwilling to chat, and quite bad-tempered.
So I presume you figure out by now. You figure out by now, just a second. So, okay. So yes, thank you for saying that I still had the same. So I'll come back a little bit and explain what was happening. So the tape script that I took. Yeah, the tape script that I took. So I modified it in a few ways. The first time I just added the words that weren't originally there. The second time I actually deleted the words from original tape script. And the third time, as you see, I've replaced some words with the new ones, with sometimes synonyms, sometimes opposites. So still I provided the same part of speech so that it didn't look that much suspicious, but like with a different meaning. So what does this task actually do? This task gives students a chance to stay concentrated while listening. That doesn't let their mind wander off, but still be focused on what they hear and compare to what they see. So this is a great activity to train the skill of staying concentrated. One more thing that you can do is, this time I've also taken words from the same listening task, but this time I just chose 8 words. I would usually write them on the board, and while my students listen, I would ask them to put the words in the order they hear them. So, but be sure that you choose the words that they will hear while listening only once, because otherwise it can be really confusing. So let's see. Just a second.
CD1 Track 5.
To make sure that I'm correct.
1.
I once met a very strange girl. It was at a summer camp. The two of us ended up sharing the same room, so I felt I had no alternative but to make friends with her. I'd always been very outgoing and open-minded, so it was part of my nature to want to socialize with people. She seemed the complete opposite, withdrawn, unwilling to chat, and quite bad-tempered. Anyway, I plucked up enough courage to talk.
So as you see, I try to choose the words that would be at least within a couple of seconds, like time difference between each other, so that your students have got time to rearrange the words. And this is also one more activity that helps your students to stay concentrated. So summing up listening, what can we say? That you need to read questions really, really attentively, first of all. Then you need to use visualization. If you have got only words, make your brain draw this picture. It will be so much easier for you to understand then what they are speaking about. Then be ready to hear about all the pictures or all three options, but remember that only one of them is connected to the question itself. Then first reading, first listening, this is for gist, just to get the whole picture because you still need it. Then underline keywords and train to do it really quickly. If you're confident that some answer is wrong, cross it out immediately because later you might not remember what exactly was wrong. Then while training your students, make them explain what's wrong with all with the incorrect options. They should say why exactly they are incorrect. Maybe color was mentioned different, maybe opposite and negative forms are confused, positive and negative forms are confused. So they need to understand why they chose this option, not another one. Also, one more trick that I sometimes do is in the lessons, while doing listening task, I make some noise. I start walking around the room, probably it's like taking something from my desk or putting something on my desk. Why do I do it? Of course, not to irritate my students, even though they might get a little bit irritated, but this is for their own good, actually, because in real life, we very, very rarely find ourselves in the situations where we are in absolute, silence. Usually there are some noises around us. And nobody can guarantee that in the ZNO test, they will be seated in very, very quiet class. Probably someone might start sneezing or coughing. There could be some sounds of something going on outside because since this is the beginning of summer, everything can happen. It can be really, really hot and the windows will be open. Nobody knows where the school will be located. So there might be some cars, the noise of the cars, or some children playing in the yard, or it might start raining and you will have this sound of raindrops on window ledges. And so they need to get used to listening in noise. So also make the small noises, please. Or if you're a student training yourself, you might even switch on some music, a little bit music or TV on very, very low sound so that this sound exists and it will actually make you concentrate more on what you hear. And train to distinguish different accents, because nobody says that there isn't a rule that all recordings should be in British English or in American English. You might come across Australian accent, you might come across Welsh, or whichever. So nowadays, modern technology with access to internet, on YouTube, you can find a lot of examples of different accents, of listening tasks in different accents. So take them and use them for training, for trying to distinguish sounds in different accents. So we are moving on to reading section of our test. Is going to consist of 3 types of tasks, but there will be 4 tasks. You see that task 4, because the first 3, you remember, they are listening. Task 4 and task 6, they are similar type. This is matching, but they are going to be different from the point of view what is expected, because task 4 is reading more for gist, while task 6, this is reading for specific information. Then you will have, just like in listening, multiple choice, And you are going to have gap filling activity. This is which will be a kind of a bridge between reading and lexical and grammar work. So beginning with the first reading task. The first reading task, as I've already said, this is for gist, understanding general idea. In most cases, in this task, you have to work either with advertisements or interview, and so what you will have to match either question with the answer, or the like advertisement is about, piece of information is about, but usually they all about different topics. So what should you do here first? Even though this is for gist, this is the type of a task where you will have to start not with reading the texts, but with concentrating on like the sentences you will have to choose among. So let's see. In what way should you work with the sentences? Of course, as usually, you will have to work with the pen in your hands. Just like in listening, you will have to work with the keywords and phrases. But here there is one more thing. As you understand, there are 5 advertisements, but 8 statements, which means that there are 3 distractors. In this task, there are always 3 distractors. What are distractors? Distractors are sentences or phrases that have been put here, that have been inserted here with the purpose of distracting your attention. In most cases, they are in some way similar to the actual items that you will need to use. So let's try and figure out these distractors. We have got transport service, financial service, shopping facilities, theatrical performance, sport competition, leisure center, railway excursion, and numismatic exhibition. Like I can see a few pairs. This is transport service and railway excursion, because railway it also belongs to the topic of transport actually, but here it's about services and here it's about excursion. Then I can see similarities between financial services and numismatic exhibition. We know numismats are people who collect money, who collect coins and like banknotes of different countries. But once again, in item B, this is services, and in item H, this is exhibition. And actually here I can notice, I can spot one more pair. This is sports competition and leisure center, because sport is a type of leisure activity, and actually a lot of sports are usually done in different leisure centers in the cities. So, but once again, in item E, it's competition. In item F, E just center, nobody competes. You are doing that just for pleasure. And after that is done, you start reading, you start working with advertisements themselves. So here, let's have a look at the first one. The central bank collection of coins, banknotes, and decorations displayed along with the related items from the National Museum, open daily during office hours or by appointment. The first word that we notice is bank. The word, I mean, that will be important for us. So this is the word bank. And bank is about money. But we remember that we had 2 options about money. We had financial service and numismatic exhibition. So now we need to look at the advertisement once again and make sure which of them it's like exactly. So let's see if it's service or exhibition. We can see the word collection. We can see the word National Museum, which of course leads us to the idea that this is numismatic exhibition, not financial service. Or if we take one more advertisement, Edinburgh International Climbing Arena, built around the stunning National Rock, the world's largest indoor climbing arena, features the terrifying arena assault, gym, spa, soft play cafe, and over 250 climbing routes to drive. So if you look at the picture, it's also quite tricky, I would say, because the picture shows climbing, rock climbing, and it looks like somewhere outdoors, because like you don't see like any interior of the building, yes, and you see a piece of a rock, which might make you think that this is about sport competition. But our E, sports competition, is linked with F, leisure center. So once again, we are checking the information and trying to find something about competition if we think this is sport. But if you look attentively, you notice that there is nothing about competition. Instead, we have got words like gym, spa, soft play, cafe, and we understand that it all corresponds to the idea of leisure center. That's why here we need to choose item F. And so in such a way, you work through all the advertisements one by one, going from top to bottom. When the items are linked, please make sure you check both of them. Because here, if you noticed, like not the first options like should be the correct ones, but the second ones. And this is also can also be quite tricky, yes, because yeah, you see, for example, you see bank finances and never check, and you might forget to check the second one. Or you see sport and you are pretty much sure that this is competition and you are not checking whether there is actually any competition or not. So this is the way you work with the first reading task. Moving on to the second reading task, which is the biggest one in the ZNO test. Of course, it's not as big as the reading tasks students have to do while taking IELTS exam. It's much smaller, but still the text would be more or less the same. This is the text, and for me, this is the only reading test in the ZNO test, where you first of all have to start with reading the text itself, not with the questions. You will need to have this full picture, and what I actually recommend my students to do, like usually the task is divided into paragraphs. But nobody guarantees you that the questions are also going to be in the order information is mentioned in the text. There isn't such a rule. Nobody can guarantee that. More or less, if you look at past papers from, for example, I think that was from 2016, this is the text that was given to students in the ZNO test. And I've underlined for you so that you can see that the answer to question 6, which is the first one, in like here, yes, the answer is given at the very end of the text. And the question to question 9, answer to question 9 is given somewhere in the middle of the text. That's why, once again, reading for gist is a must. Why should you read for gist? To understand the structure, of what you are reading. The way I train my students, they read the text paragraph by paragraph, and then like on margins, somewhere on margins or above, like wherever they have like empty spaces, they like in maximum 3 words, they write down like the main idea, like what the paragraph is about, what kind of information can be found here. Why to do it? Because later when you start working with the questions, you will already know what paragraph to look like, information for. Without that, they might like have to read and reread the text all over again while searching for the answer for every single question. Sometimes the questions are also made in quite a tricky way. For example, if you take the test from ZNO test in 2017. Here, like the beginning of the task was pretty pleasant for the students because the first 3 questions, they even said where you need to look for the information. According to paragraph 1, it's stated in paragraph 2 that, or in paragraph 3, the author says that the sisters. And what happens next? You read next paragraph question, which of the following is true about Olivia, and your brains, it takes it automatically as, okay, paragraph 1 has already been mentioned, 2 has been mentioned, 3 has been mentioned, so which means that question 9 for this paragraph and the last one is about the last paragraph. But it's not that easy as it may seem, because actually the answer for question 9 was given also in paragraph 3. So if the paragraph is not provided, the number of paragraph is not provided, take it as the answer can be located in any part of the text, in the beginning, in the middle, at the end. So be ready for that. So you've read the text, you've concentrated on the main ideas of paragraphs. What you do next? Next, of course, you start working with the questions, once again with your pen, concentrating on keywords and checking information each time. Work with questions one by one. Like if we read the first question, we'll take this text. So what we see, according to paragraph 1, James Burt inspired Isabella and Olivia. So James inspired Isabella, Olivia, yes? Then the sisters got a prize for humorous program. Sisters, prize, humorous program. James Burt is the chief manager of the foundation. James, chief foundation. The girls show how to cook delicious dishes via the internet. Girls show, cook, internet. So this is like all that I would need to underline for the first question. Then I read the text the second time. This time we are reading for details. We need details of each of these items. So we read when you visit website, a cherry bell signals that the fun is about to begin. Isabella and Olivia, Illinois, use the power of video to teach kids how to prepare tasty recipes. Yeah, we see that they video prepare tasty recipes. The cool thing is the sister kids themselves. They won for their website James Burt Foundation Award. So this cannot be B, because they didn't get for humorous prize. We see that it was cookery, yes. So James Burt Foundation Award, this is the name of the award, named after world famous chef, not chief. We understand this is different words, so this is not, C is not the correct one. And like we see nothing about James inspiring Isabella and Olivia. We just know that the word was named after him. So which gives us item D as the correct one, since we have also found proof for it. So, and question by question, you do the rest of the text. You work with the rest of the text. Each time crossing out the wrong ones and underlining key words for the right one. What I would normally do, I would normally not only underline the words that correspond to correct options, I would also write here like 6D. So I know which question and which items it corresponds to. Then like I am so much confident that I didn't make any mistakes here, that I got it everything right. So this is the way to deal with multiple choice reading task. Moving on, Moving on. By the way, yes, one more thing, how to train reading for gist skills. This is jigsaw reading, when you just take a text and you cut it into a few pieces and you try to put the pieces back together. Or like what else you can do, you also cut the text into pieces and each group of students gets only one part. So each group reads their part and then they discuss together what each of them has read about and they try to restore the whole story. Then, like which paragraph speaks about? Yeah, they would read the text and then I would say, okay, which paragraph speaks about the award that the girls got? Or which paragraph speaks about the height of one of the girls and so on. And they will need to give the number of paragraphs, 1, 2, 3, or 5. Okay, then think of a heading. So this is what they actually need to do while reading. They think of a heading for each of the tasks. Yes. Then one more activity. You may ask them to read only the first or the last sentence of the paragraph and guess what the rest of the paragraph is about. Rearranging paragraphs, just mixing up paragraphs and making your students to put them into the correct order again to see the logic of the story. So that's it. So next reading task, which is task 6 in ZNO. As we've already mentioned, this is also matching activity, just like task 4, but task 4 contained advertisements. First of all, they were short term, and secondly, all of them were on different topics, while task 6 contains different pieces of information, this time 6, but all of them are united by one topic, and usually topic is provided. Here you see the tiniest dwellings in the world. So here you begin also with just like in matching activity, you actually begin with working with options you have. Also reading them with the pen, sorry, they are not given pencils, yes. So underlining keywords, phrases, and then they start reading and they search for corresponding words and phrases. So let's imagine that I have already chosen the correct keywords and I begin reading. In the UK, there are 2 floor houses of 28 square feet. The first story has a bedroom and a shower. The second floor has a living room and a kitchen. It is assumed that only one person can live in the house, though currently a nice young couple of farmers is renting it. What is more, the house has an orchard in the backyard. And when I was underlining keywords and phrases, what I actually did, I found out that 2 statements, the first one, D, facility, grow fruit and berries at home, and the second one, fresh vegetables in the backyard. Yes, but we understand that home, it doesn't mean house. Backyard is still part of your home. And here we have got orchard, and the tricky word is the backyard. This is actually a trap that you might come across on every single step while reading the text. Yes, when some actual words are given, but like the phrase corresponds to the statement only partly. Like here you have got backyard and the backyard is in the task, in the text. But orchard, we understand that orchard is a place where fruit, berries, and nuts are grown, not vegetables. So has a facility to grow fruit and berries at home. Backyard part of a home, fruit and berries are grown in orchard. So in this case, item D would be the correct one. Once again, here I would write down this way. I would write down D. So I don't write question numbers here, just letters here, because later when they have to transfer answers into their answer sheet, they will have questions in the correct order. And if you just write number of questions here, you might get confused when you have 27 in the middle and 32 in the beginning. So it can be quite confusing. Don't do that. Always write it next to the text. So number, letter, this way. So this is the way you are working with the third reading text. So yeah, as you see, the main tips here were work with lexis. Once again, like in the first reading task, think of the phrases, like think of the distractors. Like here we had like these similar ones. Yes. Find keywords in the text and remember that the correct options are always paraphrased. Remember about paraphrasing. Moving on to the next task. The next task, which for some students seems the most complicated. Why? Because it combines knowledge of both grammar and lexis. So you need not only to understand what the text is about and find some corresponding ideas, but also make sure that the part of the sentence fits in grammatically. So actually, there are two ways to work with such texts. The first way will be called top to bottom, and the next one, the second one, bottom to top. So you might start by working with top, and you might start by working with the bottom. So first of all, we'll discuss the first one, and for that I'll choose the next. On the next slide, just a second. What do? We start reading the text without analyzing options first, but we are not reading just to get pleasure from the story. We are reading and analyzing what kind of information might be missing, what can be inserted there, both lexically, like the idea, and grammatically. If you look at the some statements, I won't be reading from the very beginning, like just here. She was clever and confident, and with all these languages and a pretty face. So then you have comma, you have the idea that she was clever and confident, and with all this language and pretty face. Yes. So if the information is separated with comma, it means that this is just some extra information which can actually be taken away and the sentence will still have meaning because you have got subject and predicate. So something that like also full part of a sentence, probably. Okay, then the next one. If we look, she returned to Marseilles in her 40s and opened a herb shop. Once again, you have got kind of a full sentence. She returned in her 40s and opened a herb shop. Probably you might have here, let's think what. It might be the reason she returned for. It might be people she returned with. So it can be some people. It can be infinitive of purpose, like as possible versions. Then it was there when he came into her bookshop looking for coffee. Here we have got the word, let me see, yeah. So here we have got the word he. So no man has been mentioned so far. So we understand that in this part, we will have information about a man. And it was there that actually subject and predicate, because this is also time clause. So main part of the sentence with the subject and predicate principal clause is missing with the some man as a subject. Or next, a year later, when they were married, he told her and he showed her the unopened bags in her cupboard. He told her that, for example, yes, usually told that And so some information connected with unopened bags in her cupboard, because later, like earlier in the text, we read actually that he used to buy small bags of mint tea. And we can predict, since he bought bags of mint tea and then showed unopened bags in her cupboard, it means that he hadn't drunk them. Probably he just didn't like mint tea. Probably he just came into the shop just to look at her. So while analyzing, we predict what can be in the gaps. So after we've analyzed all of the gaps, we are looking at options. We are looking at options and what we see. So then we analyze options. Also with their pen in hands, told me stories about her life. Here you have got predicate, which means that subject has been mentioned before. To get married, infinitive, to be close to her family. Infinitive of purpose, and we know that gap 2 actually could be filled in with infinitive of purpose. She returned to Marcel in her 40s and opened a herb shop. To get married, no, I would say unlikely, but to be close to her family, very likely. So I would choose item C for question 2. And if we look, for example, we know about he, we can see it was there that she met her husband Adrian. Man is mentioned, remember man after the gap 3, and it fits in grammatically perfectly. And for the last one, he told her that, you see one more with that, yes, that he didn't really drink mint tea. You see, it also fits both grammatically and lexically. So it was top to bottom method. When you first read the text with gaps and try to predict what grammatically and lexically is missing from the task. But the different way is, just a second. Yeah, here. The different way is bottom to top. When first of all, you analyze the options that you have, just in the way which is already so much familiar to you. You underline keywords and phrases, and in this task, the keywords and phrases are usually some pronouns, verb forms, like what really matters in singular, plural, who, that, which also matters, because we know that that cannot be separated with comma, but which and who can be separated, like here, and it is predicted to continue to do so, and important, it important. Now we see that there is one more with and, for example, here, and helps to solve the problem. Also for singular present simple, for singular subject. Then you can see quite a few with that could allow some polar bear population to survive. That could, past form. That saving polar bear. So here we had predicate, here we have got kind of ing form which can serve the purpose of subject actually. And that the decline of the IC, once again, decline of the IC also can be used as a subject. So I would say these two ones are very similar. That human activity is directly responsible. This one is different a little bit because here human activity subject is, so predicate is provided to, and I would write here for, because responsible for, collocation responsible for, so it's so much expectable here. So after, like, so just not to waste time, I showed you how to analyze and what exactly to analyze here. You can see that we concentrated on grammar, we concentrated on parts that are similar and on differences between them. Then you start reading, and then you check, first of all, whether the like this item fits in grammatically and then lexically. This is also very important since there are a few with similar grammar structures, like polar bears have been added to the list of threatened species, have been added, and will receive special protection under US law. Why I choose this one? Because first of all, it fits grammatically from the point of view that have been added present form and will receive future form. We know that present and future, they can be combined, while past forms are usually used separately. The next one, so I would write C in here. Then in his statement, your Secretary of the Interior, Dirk Kempthorne, noted that is the greatest threat to bears. Noted that, and I predict not only that, but I also need to read the second part, is the greatest threat to bear. We have got predicate, yes? So we had two similar items that contain they and contain only subjects. Now, so two possible grammar items, but only one of them will fit in lexically, by meaning that saving for the polar bear is the greatest threat. Sorry, what? Of course, saving cannot be threat. So definitely this one is not E. That the decline of the Arctic sea ice is the greatest threat to the bears. So check both options. Make sure that only one fits in. So read the sentence until the full stop to make sure you are not making any mistake. And so in such a way you work with, yeah, it was F, yes. So in such a way you work with the rest of the text. Once again, like here in the gaps on the lines, write down the letters. Don't write number of questions here, not to confuse all the numbers afterwards. So one by one, you complete the task successfully. If you teach your students to see these corresponding moments, to see the differences and similarities in grammar, I guarantee that it will be one of the easiest tasks for them. So how can we help our students? Actually, one more thing. Yeah, I have forgotten. Sorry, I have forgotten one more thing about this task. Sometimes life is full of surprises. And what happens sometimes, and it has already happened before actually, students come and see that all items, all options, they contain ink form. Swallowing the helpless Schiller, growing louder, disappearing once more, free diving with them. What can they do? Of course, here they will have to read for gist first, because they need to understand what the story is about. And still in the story, there are characters, there are main characters. And after that, after they've understood what the story is about, they also read the statements and try to predict who of the character each of the statement is about. Here in the story, the main character is Fabrice Schnuller, who was an engineer and who was actually diving with whales, who are also one of the characters of the story. So we read and predict which sentences, which parts of the sentences are about whales and which about this man. Swallowing the helpless Schnuller, of course, it's about whales. So what I would do, I would write down W for whales. Growing louder, also probably whales, because we know they make really, really loud noise. Disappearing once more, it can be about both. So free diving with them, so one person was free diving with them, so this is definitely about Fabrice. So, and in such a way, I would go on through all the items. And then I read once again, this time detailed reading, matching parts. Like a decade ago, Fabrice Schnuller was an engineer working on a system, engineer working So this is the way to deal with reading task, with this reading task, with gap filling activity. Actually, if you see that all parts of all the sentences that have been extracted from the text have the same grammar form, because you should be ready for this actually course of events as well. So the best way to train your students reading is, of course, seeing similarities between words and phrases, actually working with both lexical and grammar synonyms, like sentence paraphrasing. This is the great activity, actually. One more thing that I usually do with my students, I take a text. For example, I've taken this text. One day, a rich man decided to take his son on a trip to the country. The wealthy man wanted to show his son how the poor people lived so he could be thankful for his wealth. I make sure that the end of the line in most cases is not the end of the sentence. Why? Because look what I do next. I just, like in this, like for online activity, I just mixed up all the lines, just typed them on a separate, like, I am busy. Come and take it. So, sorry, it was one boy, I know. So, but what I would actually do in the class, if we work offline, I would just take a text and cut it into lines. Like, if I'm very kind, I will cut it like every 2 lines. If I'm not very kind, I will cut every single line. And while reading, they need to restore the story. They need to restore it both by the meaning, it should be meaningful, and of course, they learn to see the connection between the end of one phrase and beginning of the next one. We see the beginning. One day, a rich man decided to take his son on. Of course, if you have got on, you will have something like a noun, probably a noun with an adjective before that. Decided to take his son on a trip of the country. The wealthy man wanted to, this is infinitive, yes? To particle to is already here, so we will be looking for a just bare verb, to be thankful for his wealth. Yeah, and so in such a way, the students rearrange the whole story. So summing up reading, we can say that students need to learn to work with keywords in both questions and options. They will be reading either for specific information or for gist, depending on the type of a task. Remember, gist, this is the first reading task. And also gist, you will need it for the second text because it's quite a big one, so you still need gist. And the gap filling if all items begin with similar grammar structures. Then when you found what you think is the correct answer, check once again the keywords like underline these corresponding phrases. Also, like is this one actually, train your students to underline the correct answers in the text, and remember about paraphrasing. In both reading and listening, you will have to deal with paraphrasing. And the last section we will be working with today is use of English. We are not going to speak about writing today because writing is quite a big topic. This is the subject matter about a whole separate webinar, which I will conduct later in the year, probably in December or in January, depending on how busy I am. So use of English comprises of 20 questions, 5 or 10, sorry, for lexis and 10 for grammar. For lexis, it used to be just one big test, but now they make it a little bit easier for students because they divide it into 2 short ones. For grammar, it's always been 2 short texts. So how do we work with them? Like similar ways, since this is a gap filling activity and we have already worked about one gap filling activity, here we'll do absolutely the same. Our two methods, top to bottom and bottom to top. So if we take top to bottom, for example, I've taken this text here, we read and predict what lexis is missing, which words are missing. The salad, despite the Mediterranean nature of its name, of its origin, of its something, yes, has nothing to do with any Roman emperor named Julius. Yeah, I'm more than sure that this is name because named Julius and this is Caesar. It is widely reported that they were first cooked. Caesar salad, this is the name of a dish. So I predict that this is dish was first cooked in the 1920s by the American restaurateur Cesare Cardini, although this is by some of Gardini's family and others. The word although gives us contrast. It means that here you will have some form, and you can see that it's passive form, something like in the meaning similar like not everybody agrees. Somebody doesn't agree. Yeah, probably questions it. So something like this. And so in this way, we go through all the items, and then the only thing that we need to do actually is to find our words, is to find, and to find our words in options. So the salad, despite the Mediterranean nature of its, okay, ingredients. Yeah, here I was wrong. It's ingredients, but still not items, not pieces, not units, because the text is about cooking. Yes, and the only word connected with cooking here is ingredient. I was so right about the word dish, and I was so right about the word question. You know, I actually try to encourage my students to use this method. For me, it works much better, and I can explain why. When you don't see options, you concentrate on the meaning. You choose the word, you also draw this picture, you choose this object. Yes, and then you just have to find it among the options, and you don't get confused by many words you have. Like if I start with item, pieces, units, ingredients, I will probably start thinking, what do they have in common? What are the differences between them? And that means that time wasted actually. But if you teach your students to work like using top to bottom methods, they will save a lot of time, really a lot. But for somebody, this is still hard because you have to be like at least B1 plus level to do that. And you need to have really extended lexis to do that. So for the others who are not that much actually advanced, so we can use bottom to top method, which means that we begin to work with the bottom with options. We need to understand in what way the words are similar, in what way they are still different. The great way to teach it is like take for example, all the options that are given, like cut them in pieces and ask your students to put them in order so that you have got number and A, B, C, D. Like here, we have got words like remains. We can match it together with remains, goes, continues, and lives. First of all, they are present simple forms. Secondly, they are about either staying or moving away somewhere, yes, while remain and continues, it's like being the same, goes, leaves, it's moving to a different thing, yes, or like at, on, during, for. Prepositions. You might try to predict, like we know the during is used with nouns, for example, yes? For, if it's not collocation, it's used with time periods and so on. Then you will have, for example, color, design, fashion, print. Yes, you see similarities. You can also discuss differences. And after that is done, you can give them the actual task and they do it. Or I don't usually give the actual task, I just give them the top of the text and they choose the words and fill the gaps with the words. They just take the slips of paper and put them into the gaps. So this is bottom to top methods. So once again, in bottom to top methods, you analyze what the words have in common and what are the differences between them. And then when you work with the text, you will already see which word is used in which of the context. Like, yeah, this is the text I was talking about. Yes, so they would like discuss the remain, goes, continues, and lives, for example. Yeah. So at the beginning of the 20th century, the t-shirt quickly became an American favorite. Now, a century later, the TV shirts as popular as ever. It means that it hasn't changed at all, and so we will choose the word remains, definitely. And so, or if you take the second one, the American t-shirt began World War I. World War I, actually, this is a noun when we discussed before that during is used with nouns, not for, not on, nor at, so but during, and so on. So here you're concentrating more on lexis than on gist, while in the first, like in top to bottom, you're concentrating more on gist actually. So moving on, the way you can actually train these skills, train working with lexis, is of course working with words easily confused. A lot of books nowadays provide these sections. Actually, and a lot of exercises can be found in the internet. So please, use them. Please give them to your students. So use the benefit of what we have actually. One more activity that helps to develop this sense of what is next, what word is given, what word is missing. This is short story. So my students love this activity a lot because the stories are usually really, really great. And more than that, they have to use their thinking skills. They have to use their predictive skills. And so that's why it's so great. The word that you remove, it should be the key word in the story, like in a joke, it would be something from a punchline, for example. Actually, yeah, something from a punchline. So I want to show you one of my favorites, the gambler's scene. Satan came in Gambler's Wilson's dreams. Let's play high card wins. The stakes, untold riches if you win, your soul if you lose. Wilson considered, agreed, and drew an ace. Satan drew a jack. I win, said Wilson. Satan smiled, but playing with the devil is unforgivable. So and we understand that the word is lose. So in such a way, we train our students top to bottom skills, train them to predict the missing word. So moving on to grammar, the second section of use of English, this is grammar. Also like two methods, top to bottom, bottom to top. Actually, I will do now like this. I will cover the bottom and show you that this task can be done really, really easily without getting confused a lot. One of my memorable summer was my trip down under to New Zealand and Austria when I had the opportunity, blah, blah, blah. One of many, and one of is usually used with the superlative adjective, but we see my, usually superlative form is used with article the, but here we see my that doesn't give us to put the. So I would choose here the superlative adjective without article the. Now let's have a look. Yes, I see it most. And now I will show you the task. This is from last year's, just this, yeah, this way. From last year's extra session, I think. I will also cover the bottom, and here all items can be easily predicted in terms of forms, like without even looking at the tasks at all, at options, I mean. If you fancy, it's easy. After fancy, you need ink form. So head to Japan, where the hairstylist is offering free cuts, providing he can do, he wants to your hair, what he wants, whatever he wants, like question word, question phrase is missing. It's a bold move, but the hub barber in Tokyo is offering impressive makeovers for those daring enough. After true and enough, full infinitive is used, so I will be looking for full infinitive. Then they want to cheer up their parties on make themselves out of the crowd. After let and make, all my students know it that bare infinitive is used. So I will be looking for bare infinitive. While being can be fun. While being somebody or some way can be fun. It might be not so great if you get fired. So now let's have a look. Yeah, I predicted in form. So getting, then can do whatever, yes, then enough to take, then make themselves stand, because once again after let and make, by the way, the two items they love so much to put into the ZNO test, because like not all students remember that let and make take only bare infinitive. And while being different, like be plus adjectives. So as you see, so here we did the whole task actually like without looking at options. So while by the time we needed options, we already knew what to search for. So this is so easy. It was so easy. But still, sometimes we work with bottom to top method. Once again, if the students are not so advanced, their level is not so advanced, and still here there are some items they can do without even reading the text. If here you look at item 55, you have got 6 mile with hyphen, 6 mile with hyphen and possessive, singular, 6 mile hyphen possessive plural, 6 miles just plural. Yes, if your students did grammar well or still do grammar well, they know that the only correct option is A, because when adjective is formed with the help of numeral and noun, they are also written with a hyphen, and neither possessive nor plural forms are formed. So this item can be done without reading the text itself. Yeah, like here, this is from this text. One more thing that is very important while working with grammar. The difficult thing while working with grammar is not about complex structures. It's not about difficult lexes. It's usually about long sentences. If you look at the sentence, the interesting memorial showing Albert Einstein on a bench, Mount blah blah blah, is present at the National Academy of Science, Washington, D.C. More than 2 lines, and this is just one sentence. So the first, and if they see that the options they have got, they are verbs, so the first question they have to answer to themselves is whether they need predicate or not predicate. And to answer that, you need to find subject and predicate in the text. So let's look at the text, the sentence again. The interesting memorial, we know the sentence begins with the subject, showing Albert Einstein. Also, what I've noted here that the part of the missing like goes directly after Albert Einstein, which is an object in the sentence. Yes, is present, is of course predicate. So the interesting memorial is present. Now let's look at options. What we have, sits. No, it's not our case because this is only predicate, this is only present simple. Has seated, this is present perfect, also predicate, and we found out we don't need predicate. First of all, we already have predicate. And secondly, we are searching for a verb for object, and objects don't take predicates. That's a subject that usually do, that always do, of course. And then we have choice between seated and sit. Seated, it can be past participle, like passive form, or sit, this is bare infinitive, which is used in very limited number of cases. Yes, after modal verbs, after let and make an active form, after would, had better, would rather, basically all, yes, which is none of the cases. So we choose seated and we can check it. The interesting memorial show Albert Einstein, which is seated, который усажен. So as you see, this one is correct. Or here, we'll take the last sentence. I've taken like this item. Because of the industrial revolution, Britain and especially London very quickly. Here we also see we are working with verbs. So which means we need to find subject and predicate. Industrial revolution. No, not industrial, because of Britain and especially London. Very quickly, definitely not a predicate. So we need a predicate. And also analyze. Grown, third form by itself, never predicate. Ink form by itself, never predicate. And then we have was grown and grew. Was grown, well, Britain and London, they definitely not carrots to be grown. So we need active form. That's why grew is the correct option here. So this is what you need to remember while working with grammar. If you are working with verbs, remember to check presence of subject and predicate, and then you will be able to identify which of them you need, predicate or not predicate. A great way to train these skills is sentence paraphrasing. This is a great skill that your students will need for both lexis, like in reading and listening, and of course for grammar, because they will see the variety of grammar forms. One more activity that can be used, also gap filling, this one for grammar, concentrating on grammar words like articles, pronouns, prepositions, and so on, auxiliary verbs that also develop the sense of a language greatly, and so that will help them use top to bottom methods in grammar as well. So that is all for today. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope the pieces of advice I've given today will be really beneficial for both you and your students. Like probably in a month-year time, I will be conducting one more webinar, this time about writing, secrets of writing, how to write successful writing task in ZNO. Yes, all the details of writing different types of letter, the structure, what is expected, what is not expected, what to do, what not to do, and how to distribute time for that will be discussed. So you are more than welcome to join my webinar probably in December, but of course the information will be provided later. So looking forward to seeing you again. Welcome.